The film begins and we see the hero of the story, whose name was John. His house was in the middle of the jungle. John was sitting comfortably, but suddenly he heard a noise. When he turned around, he was shocked because there was a group of bad people who were enemies of these people. So John quickly got up and ran towards his house. Meanwhile, his dad, sleeping in the house, also heard the enemies' voices. As soon as he looked outside to assess the situation, he got scared because the enemies were coming towards their house. By then, John had also reached home, and without wasting any time, both father and son packed their belongings and left through the back door. They also took John's wife with them, who was in very bad condition because she was injured due to an illness. So John's dad realized that they wouldn't be able to run far because their daughter-in-law couldn't run either. Seeing this difficulty, his dad hid John and his wife in a pit-like box that was very dirty, but hiding was necessary. After that, Mom herself took something like a rod and went to face the attackers. Mom was alone. She went and confronted them. She attacked and killed 3 or 4 enemies, but how long could she face them alone? They were extremely dangerous, so they launched an attack on Dad all at once and brutally killed him. John and his wife, hiding in the pit, saw all this. She started crying very sadly, feeling helpless as she couldn't do anything. Now the enemies not only looted their house but also took the bag that they had accidentally left behind. That bag was very important to them because it contained John's wife's medicines. If she didn't get those medicines, her infection could get worse. They were already worried about this, but their despair increased even more when they saw that the enemies didn't even spare Dad's body. They carry their body with them, mounted on sticks like a hunted prey. Sometime later, when John came home with his wife, he was very sad to see the condition of the house. They had ruined the whole house, and now when he saw his wife's wounds, his worry increased even more because the wounds had gotten much worse, causing her to have such a high fever that she became unconscious. Now they couldn't see any way out. Everywhere there was despair and just death. But in this difficult time, John gathered courage and first collected wood from around to fix the falling hut because his wife was inside, and this was their home. Then he left some water for his wife to drink and went out to confront the enemies in order to retrieve his bag. Now it was winter. The enemies had taken all their warm clothes too. At this time, John was only wearing a t-shirt and shorts, which made him shiver in the cold as he slowly moved forward through the chilly air. Now not only was it cold, but he also hadn't eaten or drunk anything. Because of this weakness, he fell down to the ground. He was almost about to give up entirely when he suddenly saw a small child standing in front of him. He saw it. That's why he gathered his courage, stood up, and started following the child. As soon as the child saw John, he got scared and started running. When John also started running after the child's house was nearby, and he went inside and closed the door. John used all his strength to break the door and entered the house. He sees that there is an old man in the house next to whom a small child has lain down out of fear. Both of them were shivering from the cold. They were also scared of John, thinking he might harm them. But John's only intention was to take some warm clothes, which he quietly picked up and left with. He then continued to follow the enemy's tracks and reached a new place. When he got there, he was shocked because he found only his dad's bones, meaning the enemies had cooked and eaten his flesh. Seeing this, John was completely shattered. He gathered his sorrow and buried his dad's bones right there. Now filled with rage, he decided to take revenge on the enemies. With this determination, he moved forward once again. A little distance away, he sees a tent. Now he doesn't go inside directly, he assesses the danger first. He threw a stone at the tent, and when he was sure no one was there, he went inside. He found some items there, a box, a matchbox, a knife, and a whistle. He decided to keep them with him, thinking they might come in handy later on. As he moved forward, he slowly began to realize that he was completely lost. He had circled back to the same spot 2 or 3 times, so he climbed a tall tree to try and locate the enemies. His idea worked because he saw smoke rising in the distance. Suddenly, he lost his footing and fell from such a great height, tumbling down unexpectedly. But this caused a problem. The sound of falling attracted the attention of the wild dogs, and John, he heard many dogs barking. In a desperate attempt to save his life, he tried to run, but he fell because his leg was severely injured from the initial fall. So now he starts crawling forward. Night fell, and the fear of the wild dogs getting closer increased. Here, John acted wisely. He gathered some wood and started a fire, then used a piece of wood as a torch to face the dogs. Naturally, the dogs were scared of the fire, so they didn't dare to come close and instead chose to run away, and John barely managed to save his life in the process. He then falls asleep here like this. The next morning, when he woke up, the dogs were gone. John moved forward from the tree. This time, he sees blood coming from the river's water. Curious about where the blood was coming from, he went a little further back and saw a woman washing a blood-stained knife in the river. Now John acts wisely. He didn't approach her directly but watched her from hiding. As soon as the woman left, John picked up a stone and started following her. This woman was one of the enemies. Because of his profession, he finds out the enemy's hideout. But John sees it was just the woman there at the moment. Taking advantage of the situation, he starts to go inside and then he notices the bells tied with wires below. So he carefully goes inside the room and then he notices his bag lying there. But what's this? When he checked the bag, all the medicines were gone. Now John quickly went inside the house. He starts looking for the medicines everywhere, but he was unaware that the woman had seen him and was now coming towards him. She then attacks John from behind. He retaliates and a scuffle ensues between them. Although John was weak due to not eating anything, he was still strong. He overpowers the woman with his strength, then picks up a nearby stone and strikes her on the head with it, ultimately killing her. After finishing off the woman, he starts searching the cabinets for the medicines, but then his attention went outside. He sees that the enemies have returned, so he quickly cleans up the blood and erases all evidence of the fight so that it looks like nothing happened here. To dispose of the woman's body, he drags it outside while hiding it as best as he can. However, as he was carrying the body, his axe falls in between. Because the enemies were approaching quickly, he decides to hide the body behind a nearby tree. He hid behind the tree to keep an eye. He saw that this time the enemies had captured the same little boy, and he felt sad that he couldn't do anything except watch. Now the enemies start preparing to cook food. Then one of the enemies sees the axe. He realized the danger and informed the rest of his companions. So they start searching the entire area. Seeing this, John quickly hides the woman's body with leaves and lies down to hide himself. After a while, when the enemies leave, he crawls over there and thinks of going inside the house. He saw that an injured enemy was guarding the house. John now waits patiently for him to leave. As soon as he goes inside, John starts moving towards the boy to save the life of the person whom the enemies had tied up and laid on the ground. Now the boy starts screaming upon seeing John like before. He thought that this person had come to harm him, but he started calming the child down and began untying his ropes. But the child just wouldn't stop being noisy and disruptive. Hearing his voice, the enemies start preparing to come out. But by then, John had untied the boy and helped him escape. After the boy left, John went inside the house where he sees a wooden box sitting in the corner. It was locked and he was sure that the medicines were kept in this box. So he starts trying to break the lock. He exerted a lot of force, but he couldn't break the lock. Then John sees that the leader of the enemies has returned. That's why he quickly went outside, hid under the house, and waited for him to return. When the leader came inside, he noticed the dirt on the box's lock, which made him realize that someone had intruded into their area. He informs his comrades about this, and they all started going the back way. John also realized that they had found out about him because they had found the body of their female companion. John lay there waiting from day to night. At night, he saw that the enemies had burned their companion's body. Meanwhile, at home, John's wife regained consciousness. When she didn't find John, she thought of going outside, but the door was locked from the inside. She tried to break the door, but due to her injuries, she couldn't do it. Her condition worsened and she fell to the ground. John waited all night. In the morning, when the enemies were sleeping, he sneaked into the camp. He quietly went to the leader and stole the key from his neck, with which he then opened the box. His guess was right because the medicines were in the box. He quickly took the medicines, locked the box, and left. But in his haste, he didn't notice the wire of the bell. As soon as he hit it, the bell rang, waking up the leader and the rest of the enemies, and they started chasing him. John made an attempt to run in order to save his life, but due to his weakness, he couldn't run very far and was eventually caught by the enemies. They took off John's warm clothes and tied him to the ground, then started lighting a fire. It seemed like they were preparing to eat him. Just then, John noticed a whistle lying nearby. He picked it up and started playing it loudly. The loud noise caught the attention of the wild dogs. When the leader heard the barking, he ran away with his companions. Seeing this opportunity, John quickly cut his rope with a sharp knife and then swiftly hid behind a nearby tree. The dogs didn't see John and he narrowly escaped. He quickly put on his clothes and ran away from there. But the leader was cunning. To escape the dogs, he injured one of his companions so that all the dogs would chase him, and he moved forward alone. John had no idea that the leader was following me. Exhausted, he sat down against a tree. When the enemy came from behind and kicked him hard, throwing him away because the leader was not going to let John go under any circumstances. He had meticulously planned to kill him, but John bravely confronts him with unwavering courage. They had an equal fight, but in the end, John brutally and mercilessly killed the enemy. After a long time, another enemy arrived. He saw that one of my companions was dragging John away, so he started to help him. Actually, John had played a trick. He had put his clothes on the enemy and wore the enemy's clothes himself. That's why this enemy was mistaken. But before he could understand anything that was happening, John swiftly attacked and killed him too. John moved forward. He thought, I will do the same to the leader. The leader, who was standing a little distance away, was not scared at all. John carefully aimed with his arrow and hit the leader's leg, causing him to fall to the ground. Seeing this, John ran to him. Again, another target. The leader, who had already given up all hope, closed his eyes and started waiting for death to come. But the target was missed, and everything went wrong. That means they both ended up being equal. So, both of them stood facing each other with knives, ready to fight, but before the fight could start, they did not hear the sounds of wild dogs. Hearing the sounds, John ran away from there. The leader also ran, but because of an injury on his leg, he couldn't run very far and became prey to the wild dogs, who tore him apart and ate him. In this way, life was completely fulfilled. He had eliminated all his enemies and also found his wife's love, so he quickly ran back to his home. After many difficulties, when he returned, he saw that the door was open and his wife was also there. John became very disheartened because he thought that his wife must have fallen prey to either the wild dogs or the wolves that roamed the area. He sat down on the ground and started crying, but just then, his wife came up to him from behind. On that particular day, she had prayed fervently for her life and made every effort to save herself, which is why she ultimately survived. They both met each other and were very happy to see each other alive and well. And with this, the story of this film comes to an end.